Hey everyone, Alpha Eagle here again. Welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well and may God bless you all. So, I saw the first episode of My Adventures with Superman and it was woke garbage, and I'm going to tell you why. First, the title itself is confusing. Who is the My it's referring to? Is it Lois? Is it Jimmy? Is it Clark himself? And he sees Superman as a separate personality? It's not very clear. Okay, the episode starts with Clark as a boy around 10 years old, and he sees a mother and a baby in a car, and they're about to hit a tree, and trying to save them activates his powers. So far, so good. We fast forward to about 10 years later. Clark is roommates with Jimmy Olsen. Yeah, Clark and Jimmy are the same age for some reason. Anyway, Clark and Jimmy are getting ready for their first day as interns at the Daily Planet. And we get our first of many race swaps in this show as Jimmy is now black for no reason whatsoever. Now, I want you to take notice of how many minorities are in this episode compared to white people. I might be wrong, but I think the minorities outnumber the white people. The creators of this show don't seem to understand the definition of the word minority. Minority means that there are less of them. What don't they get about that? There's supposed to be less of them, not more. Less. That's what makes them minorities. Those who claim to want equal representation can't seem to figure out that when there is more minorities than white people, that means that they are overrepresented. I can hear the commies now. Oh, you're just a bigot who hates diversity. No, I like diversity and representation when it's done right. Race swaps and diversity where it's not logical and doesn't make any sense is the wrong way to do it. If you want diversity, create new characters or use existing characters. In this case, if you want to add diversity, it would make more sense if Clark was roommates with John Henry Irons. Continuing. As Clark wakes up, we can see the first of many times Clark is emasculated or made to look feminine. He's wearing a pink shirt. We also see that even though it's 10 years later, Clark still can't control his powers and breaks his alarm clock. Meanwhile, Lois is also waking up and we get our second race swap, and she's now Asian. I originally thought that she was white until I looked up the voice cast and noticed that she's played by an Asian actress. Also noticed that she is very tomboyish and androgynous looking, trying to blur the lines between male and female. Also noticed that she lives alone, showing that she don't need no man or anyone else's help with the bills, while the men struggle and have to have roommates. As Clark gets ready, he breaks the sink, his shoes, and later a door handle. Again, this is 10 years after discovering his powers, and he still can't control them. On his walk to work, he stops to save a missing cat. Now, this part I like since it shows that Superman, even with all his powers, still takes the time to do the little things. On his way to work, Clark stops off at a convenience store where he bumps into Lois for the first time. Unfortunately, the meeting is ruined when Clark is again emasculated and humiliated in front of Lois by the store owner who puts a bib on Clark. And the store owner, of course, is another minority. Clark gets back to walking to work alongside Jimmy, where Clark saves Jimmy from almost being hit by a garbage truck. And we get our first look at the villain of the episode, which is apparently Livewire. And she, and I use the word she loosely, she is the only other white main character, or at least I think she's white. And of course, since she's white, she is the villain. Would you look at that hairdo? I don't even know what to call it. She has the Mo from Three Stooges, bangs in the front, shaved on the sides, and a mullet in the back. Again, making the women look more androgynous and downright butch. Now compare Livewire from Superman the Animated Series and this monstrosity, and that's what we call a downgrade. Finally, they get to the Daily Planet and Lois bursts into the editor-in-chief's office and we get our third race swap. Perry White is now black. Ironic since his name is White. Lois tells Perry about a story she's working on in which giant robots were stolen from the military. Perry tells her to not follow up on the story. Lois then tricks Clark and Jimmy into helping her with the story. We then cut to our villain Livewire and her gang, and we are introduced to Livewire's simp Badger, who, if I'm correct, is an obscure character from the comics, who, of course, is race swapped again to a blonde haired black man. I'm really surprised that the left aren't claiming that this is a racial stereotype, because he's so weak and pathetic it's embarrassing. He's twice the size of Livewire, yet he cowers behind her like a scared puppy. And of course, Livewire is smarter, stronger, and better than any man on her team. Then we cut to Lois's news source that is not only race swapped, but also gender swapped. The Newsboy Legion is now the News Kid Legion, made up of multiple races and two genders. And of course, they are led by a sassy black girl with a bad attitude, and she doesn't seem to let any of the other kids speak. The sassy black girl stereotype tells them where to find Livewire and the giant robots. They're at the docks. Perry, not white, calls Clark, and Clark learns that Lois lied to him, and he leaves Lois. Lois basically kidnaps Jimmy. At this point, Lois is alone with Jimmy, and she calls Clark beautiful, emasculating him yet again. Men do not like to be called beautiful or pretty. Those are very feminine words. Lois and Jimmy find where Livewire took the giant robots. Livewire shoots at them but misses. Then she asks one of her simps to do something, and the simp has the brilliant idea of activating one of the giant robots to go after two young adults instead of, I don't know, shooting at them. To be fair, Livewire says this was a stupid move, but that doesn't excuse this moronic action. The sassy black girl stereotype sees this, and instead of getting the police, she finds Clark and tells him about it. At this point, Clark does not have his Superman costume yet, so he grabs the dock worker's uniform and hides his identity that way. Clark saves Lois and Jimmy from the first giant robot. Livewire's simp Badger runs away like the coward he is, but Livewire activates the rest of the robots, and Clark gets his butt whooped by them. Of course, Lois has to save him by pushing the off switch on the giant robots. Yes, it was that easy to stop them. To be fair, there is one giant robot left for Clark to stop, and after he stops him, then Clark ditches the dock worker's uniform and comes out from the shipping container where he was last seen by Lois and Jimmy, and they have a three-way hug, which comes off as very gay. Clark is nervous because Jimmy said he got pictures of the flying Superman. Luckily, when they give the pictures to Perry, not white, they are all blurry, so Clark's identity is safe. Perry, not white, refuses to run their story, but sarcastically says that he will if they get an interview with Superman. Lois takes him seriously and makes it her mission to cover every Superman story. And the episode ends with credits that seem to focus on Jimmy for some odd reason, as if he's the main character. So, does this make him the in My Adventures with Superman? So I looked at the cast and I was wrong. Livewire is not white, or at least the actress is not white. She's Pakistani. So Clark is the only white character in this episode. Now, to be fair, they do bring in other white characters like Ma and Pa Kent, but to have only one white character in the first episode of a series which is based on an American property with mostly white characters is very strange. Now, as far as the art style goes, I don't like it, and I'm an anime fan, but it doesn't work here. A more masculine anime style like Dragon Ball Z where the characters are muscular might work, but this show is more feminine like Sailor Moon. Speaking of which, I haven't seen the second episode, but I'm told that Superman has a Sailor Moon style transformation sequence, again emasculating him. This series seems like it's more aimed at women than men, and it reminds me of the latest She-Ra series, which I also hated. This art style doesn't make Superman look very heroic. In my opinion, the best art style of a Superman cartoon was the Ruby Spears Superman cartoon from the 80s. It looked as if Superman came right out of the comics, and it looked exactly like art from John Byrne or Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. This is how Superman should look, not like this. So, to sum up, My Adventures with Superman forces diversity to a strange degree, so much that minorities outnumber the white people. Black people alone outnumber white people 4-1, and that's not counting the rest of the minorities. And that would actually be normal if this was a black centric show like Static Shock or something like that. But it's not. White people are supposed to be the central characters in a show about Superman. There are also gender swaps, and the women, if they even can be called women, both men and women in this show are made to look androgynous. Anyway, the women boss around the men as if they are their pets. The main character, Clark, is emasculated and feminized throughout the episode. The whole show feels like it's made for women or gay men. So, if you can't tell, I do not recommend this show. Anyway, that's about it for this video. I'm Alpha Eagle. God bless you for watching, God bless America, and I pray that DC stops vandalizing their own IPs.